Good evening and welcome to the NADF Pediatric Adrenal Insufficiency Roundtable. We are welcoming those with us today and those that will be watching at a later date. We appreciate all of your time and energy because it is so important to offer support for our pediatric patients. So welcome parents and caregivers. Today, we're going to be discussing how the individuals who are on the call, how their child was diagnosed, how their child is being treated for AI currently, how they care for sick days. We're going to talk about NADF pediatric resources and what additional resources and information may be helpful in the future. My name is Vanessa O'Rourke, and I am the patient advocate and group leader manager for NADF. I was diagnosed with primary adrenal insufficiency in 2016, but on the first half of my journey in life, I was a performer, yoga instructor, teacher, and outdoor enthusiast. But I have shifted to a slower paced lifestyle as I continue to navigate my health, and I now spend my time advocating and educating and supporting those with chronic conditions. I will be your host for this evening and hope that I can offer support as well as information for all those caregivers out there. We're going to go over a few ground rules for those that are with us tonight. Each of you will be given an opportunity to respond for any topic. If you prefer not to answer, you could always say pass. Please place yourself on mute while others are speaking to avoid background sounds, and this will be recorded so other parents and caregivers can learn from the discussion. We are really lucky tonight because we have two individuals who are pediatric caregivers, but also support group leaders for NADF. So we have an absolute treat. Before we go in, our first question will be to have each individual tell us about how their child was diagnosed. Perhaps if you can give us your name prior so we know who we're speaking with, that would be great. And I'll turn that question over to you, Kelly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly McDonald. I am the Caregiver Support Group leader for NADF. And what brought me here is my child was diagnosed with Addison's disease, 2.5 years ago. Actually, no, she was diagnosed 1.5 years ago. She started exhibiting symptoms 2.5 years ago. Her journey to diagnosis actually began with a prior diagnosis of another autoimmune disease. I think that diagnosis perhaps blinded us to the classic Addison symptoms, which included extreme salt cravings, fatigue, the oranging, the tanning skin. That was actually kind of a benefit for a young teen. She loved that. She was also on medicine for that newly diagnosed alternative autoimmune condition. So we thought either that condition or the medicines that she was taking for it were contributing to the symptoms. It took a good 8 to 9 months before she actually ended up in an adrenal crisis, collapsing in my arms in an ER with an extremely low blood pressure. When they asked me the questions and things like salt cravings came up, they knew right away to test for sodium, potassium, and that was her path towards getting diagnosed with Addison's disease. The moment she got on the right meds, I'll tell you, that girl did not eat something sweet for that duration, 9 months. Before that, she was a waffle and chocolate ice cream for breakfast kind of girl, and she had not had a sweet in her mouth for 9 months. And once she was accurately diagnosed and treated, she literally looked over to me and said, "Can I get a cupcake?" And I started bawling in the hospital. So we were very happy to finally be able to uncover that it was Addison's. So that is Amber's, my daughter's journey to diagnoses.
Well, I am so sorry that you and your family had to endure such a long journey. It seems to be for so many, but I'm so glad that you did receive that diagnosis and that she is now able to eat her sweets again.
Yes.
I know you mentioned that she's a teen, and I know, but just so those that are watching, will you just share how old she is how old she was when she was diagnosed and how old she is now?
Sure. So it all kind of blurs. She was 12 years old when she started exhibiting symptoms, got diagnosed at 13, and she's currently 14.
Thank you so much. We actually have a really good range for those that are watching as well, because Kelly is a teen caregiver. And now we're going to pass it over to Marina, who is I don't want to say baby or infant, but a toddler caregiver. So I'll pass it over to Marina now.
Okay, hello. My name is Marina, and I am a Native Support Group Leader for New Mexico. I am a caregiver to my daughter, Ureli, who is 2 years old. She was diagnosed shortly after birth. It's funny because Kelly said the words that I always say, it was all a blur. So the first few months of her life was all a blur. Her first adrenal crisis was kind of birth. After I gave birth to her, it was an emergency C-section. Within 24 hours, they noticed that she couldn't regulate her body temperature. She couldn't, her glucose levels, she couldn't regulate those. Let's see what else. Like I said, Oliver. A lot of other contributing factors. We were in the NICU for 5 days, thought she was getting better. We went back to the hospital 5 days after being in the NICU, in the general pediatric unit, and they just couldn't figure out what was going on with her health and why she was declining, losing weight, lethargic, not even a normal baby. And about 2 weeks after being readmitted, they found out that her pituitary gland was not properly developed, and that led to all of the other health complications that she has, because she's got a few. So she's secondary adrenal insufficiency. And we spent about 2 months, close to 2 months in the hospital getting her back to health. And it was funny because it was like night and day with the baby. They started her on her meds of hydrocortisone, and the next morning she was like awake and alive, and it was like a whole, it's so crazy that like these kids or these people get diagnosed, and as soon as they put on those meds, it's like a whole new person. So yeah, we got released about 2 weeks after she was diagnosed, because they had to, of course, make sure she could maintain all her levels. And then they, taught us everything, taught us how to do the emergency shot, taught us about how many times she's got to do medication. And we had to learn other things for the other medical conditions she has. But we just started a whole new life after giving life. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I can't even imagine, bringing in a new human and then immediately going down this journey of absolute confusion and, being at a loss, because so many of us didn't know anything about adrenal insufficiency prior to these individuals or these diagnoses. So what an absolute relief that your medical community were able to figure out what was going on and get her squared away so she could get that medicine, and we do have that quick turnaround. So we're going to share how adrenal insufficiency is diagnosed in children. This may be information that you as a caregiver already know, but it's always so wonderful to revisit this, because this is life-saving information. So I'm actually going to just literally read the slide because it's such important information, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing any of it, as it is so valuable. AI can be difficult to diagnose and should be considered in any sick newborn infant, Marina, just like your situation. Given the life-threatening nature of AI, and prompt investigation and treatment are essential. A definitive diagnosis of adrenal insufficiency requires that tests be carried out. Measure the amount of cortisol and aldosterone in the blood. Document a lack of the normal increase in the levels of cortisol after administration of ACTH given by injection. Your child's doctor may also order imaging testing, such as ultrasound or CT of the adrenal gland or an MRI of the brain. Other tests may be required to rule out other causes of adrenal insufficiency, such as congenital adrenal hyperplasia, CAH, genetic tests, a physical examination, or family history. When they know family history, there is a family history of CAH, a fetus can be diagnosed before birth. So now I'd love if each of you could share how your child is currently being treated for adrenal insufficiency. So that could entail also what dose they're on, what current regime you're taking, anything that you'd be willing to share. So Kelly, go.
Sure. So my teen is taking hydrocortisone and fludrocortisone. Her hydrocortisone dosing is 3 times a day. Her morning dose is 7.5 milligrams. Her afternoon dose is 5 milligrams, and her evening dose is 2.5. We've played around, I would say, with the morning dose because we try to have some semblance of a quote unquote normal teenage life. So sometimes she does sleep in, I will be honest. The doctors want her to have that morning dose, at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I have let her sleep as late as 9 a.m. without taking that morning dose. We've tested it, we've adjusted it and it hasn't affected her negatively, thank goodness. But we are very regimented on those 3 doses. The fludrocortisone is 0.1 milligrams a day. It sounds like that's a pretty typical standard dose. And that's all as far as the medicine. We make sure she's hydrated. Prior to diagnosis, I was a pretty strict parent that kind of regulated the sugar drinks. But Addison's, coupled with her other condition, the doctors have urged me that, food is good, but liquids are life for her. So we will, let her drink as much Gatorade or vitamin water or whatever it is to keep her hydrated. So that is how she's being treated currently.
That's great. I'm so glad that you found a consistent regime that works for you and that's supportive and that's tried and true, because it is a trial and error and it can be so challenging. So when you do find that good sweet spot or that balance, it can be such a relief for everyone involved. So thank you so much for sharing.
Vanessa, if I may add, in our support group, that is certainly a constant conversation because we've had people talk about up to 5 doses, and some people have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to take a dose. And what we try to talk to, we try to keep it positive and always let the caregivers know that you will find the right dose. You just have to be comfortable with tweaking, and you just have to have your doctors, willing to kind of shift around, but don't be okay with a subpar existence. Don't be okay with waking up nauseous every single day and not being able to keep your meds down, because there's something that needs to be tweaked.
I think that's such a valid and wonderful thing to bring up, because no patient is the same. And if you line up any patients with adrenal disease, many of us have multiple conditions. So there's a lot of things at play. So one dose is not going to be set standard, and it will shift, especially with children as they're aging and adults as we're going through different stages and phases of our life. So it is a fluctuating thing that it is so important to, I think you said, did you say tweak? I really like that word. It is like a tweaking. Yeah. You're constantly tweaking it. But when you do find some stabilization in between the tweaks, that's the perfect spot.
Sweet spot.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Marina, if you don't mind sharing what you guys are doing.
Yes. So obviously I have a 2-year-old. So like those doses are like, that's high, but a smaller baby. So we do hydrocortisone only. We are on 0.5 milligrams of that. She gets half of a pill 2.5 at 8 a.m. and then the other half is at 5 p.m. Right now, within the last month, I've been emailing back and forth with her endocrinologist, just trying to see if possibly we can switch it. I'm noticing some kind of patterns, but we actually due to see her this week, so we'll probably talk about that if we need to tweak it or not. But yeah, that's what we're on for now.
That's great. Yeah. And it is such a significant difference, infant patients and toddler patients versus teens and adults. It is such a wide range of milligram amounts. So that's completely different. And actually, something that we're going to talk about next is a way that will make that easier in the future. Again, I'm going to read these slides because it is so valuable and so important, and I don't want to miss anything. AI treatment in infants and children with primary adrenal insufficiency challenges exist to achieve appropriate and adequate dosing because it is so hard to split those pills. Pediatric Endocrine Society guidelines on PAI recommend that children are given hydrocortisone in 2 or 3 divided doses per day, and that those with aldosterone deficiency take fludrocortisone to replace that hormone and help salt fluid balance. A 2015 survey of European pediatric endocrinologists found that 1 milligram or 2 milligram were the most common doses of hydrocortisone they prescribed for infants and newborns, possibly in multiple doses, like your case, Marina. Caregivers have to crush or split tablets to get the dose prescribed. In a small 2018 UK study, researchers concluded that there is risk of under or overdosing children due to the imprecise dosing as a result of manipulating tablets, which can be so challenging. I know I manipulate my tablets, which are 10, and I cut them down to 5. Even that's really hard to do. Not sure if anyone is familiar. We've been talking about it for quite a while. This really exciting approved for pediatric use in the US are hydrocortisone granules that can make administration easier. It's indicated for treatment of all forms of AI, including CAH, in infants, children, and adolescents, offers the ability to accurately prescribe and administer smaller pediatric appropriate doses, provides more flexible, individualized dosing with 4 low strength options, as low as 0.5, which is absolutely super small, but so incredibly helpful for those with the smaller requirements. It masks the bitter taste of hydrocortisone and removes the need for pill manipulation like cutting, splitting, and dissolving. It may be administered by pouring the granules on a spoon with food or directly into the child's mouth. So each of these little capsules can be opened and you're pouring that little granules, like almost like sprinkles, like you're sprinkling on like salt or something. You can put it on food, you can put it in under their mouth, just like they said. But this is going to be something that's, absolutely going to help with that pill manipulation. So you're getting the exact right dose and you're not guessing one way or another if you don't get directly on that line. So now, oh, yes.
I just wanted to add, because that dosing, I did have to adjust how I was administering the dose as well, because I was losing a lot in cutting. So her first dose is 7.5, which obviously they don't make. They either make a 5 or a 10. And for her afternoon, it's a 5. So that's a simple cut. But we've begun utilizing a compounding pharmacy to get more exact dosing. So that's a resource that we use.
That's a really great option. And I'm so glad you brought that up because that could be valuable to a lot of people. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now I'd love to ask each of you how you are currently caring for sick days. As stressors pop up, what are you doing to adjust medication for your patient?
So we have been so lucky that we haven't had to adjust many times since diagnosis. Our caregiver team is very conservative, and they really don't want us stress dosing unless there is a fever or she's not keeping her meds down. So in the time that she has had a fever, we've had to double her dose for 24 hours until 24 hours after the fever is gone. That's only happened a handful of times, thank goodness, knock on wood. Other than the doubling the dose, like I said, the caregiver team for my daughter is reluctant to suggest stress dosing for preemptively for things like hot days or anything like that. So we've really waited for a clear symptomatic need.
Thank you so much for sharing. Marina, I would love to ask you the same question. How are you currently caring for sick days?
So I can only think we've never given her her emergency shot. Thank God. Woohoo, 2 years. But we have done stress dosing. She actually recently got sick and she had a fever, and that was my clear indication to do that. And it was about 24 to 48 hours that we kept her on a double, triple dose. I have stress dose also. For holidays, I had noticed a pattern, and just this past Halloween, I had noticed it was a lot, and she had so much fun, but I could tell the toll it took on her body because immediately the next day she was just out. And so I'm tending to pick up on those cues of her. If there's a lot going on, I'm gonna not necessarily triple dose her, but I will double dose her so she's okay. Um, our endocrinologist has told us that it's not, the biggest thing if you triple dose her and she didn't exactly need it. But of course, we use our judgment. And I think me and my daughter kind of have, she doesn't speak yet, but we have like a thing. I think we just connect mother-daughter thing. And there's some times where I'm just like, you know what, I think we need to give you a little extra today. So she's only gotten sick, really sick, maybe 2 times in her life too. So yeah, knock on wood. That's kind of how we take care of that.
I'm so glad that she has you and that you guys do have that connection and you're able to pick up on when she needs that, because, at that age when they're not talking, it really is the caregiver who is taking care of her, taking care of the individual. They're not able to tell you when they need it. So it's so important and so incredible what you do. So stress and sick day dosing in children with primary adrenal insufficiency is very important. A child with AI will need their hydrocortisone dose increased at times of significant body stress. This is known as stress dosing and is required for fever, severe diarrhea, vomiting, or trauma, or surgery. Each child's endocrinologist should be consulted for specific instructions on stress dosing, with the exact exception that if a child is not able to take oral medications because of vomiting or lack of consciousness, hydrocortisone injections should be used. An emergency hydrocortisone injection kit should be available for such situations. Parents should learn how and when to administer intramuscular hydrocortisone injections. Persistence of these signs requires immediate treatment in the emergency room with intravenous saline and hydrocortisone. And I know, Marina, you mentioned you have it, you've never had to use it, but it is so essential for us to have these on hand, especially caregivers, to administer in these emergency situations. So now we've talked about a lot of things, and for those that have been on NADF's website, you may be familiar with this already, but we'd love to share some of the pediatric resources. We actually have an entire corner of our website that's dedicated to pediatric patients with adrenal insufficiency. All of these links are live and you can click on them and go to them, but you're also welcome to visit the website, nadf.us. You can click on our tools, scroll all the way down to our children with adrenal insufficiency, and you're going to get a wealth of information. We've got facts you need to know, adrenal crisis alert flyer for children, and that's also we have in Spanish, so you can print out all of these things. You can print out. They're great resources to have online, but a lot of this is good resources for your child to have with them as they're going to school, going to daycare, having play dates. This is all really important information that you may know, but the other caregivers that are seeing them regularly may also want to have on hand. We have the adrenal crisis care medical information and how to administer that emergency injection. We have videos as well as PDFs that you can have as a resource, also in Spanish as well. We also have information on the COVID-19 risks that are increased for children with AI, the there is a pediatric adrenal insufficiency webinar that was hosted with medical professionals. It is a huge resource and great thing to watch and review. We have a brochure on treating pediatric AI, information on that Alkindi sprinkle, the individual hydrocortisone granules. And then, as well as one of my favorite newer resources that we have is the Pediatric Adrenal Insufficiency Action Plan with pictograms. And it is a wonderful printout of actual images that help describe symptoms that you can use with your child. And it's great to have. I know a lot of people use it with nurses in school. They have that with their nurse as part of their plan as an individual and a caregiver. So those are a lot of the resources that we have at NADF, in addition to online support groups. Kelly is our caregiver support group leader. So we have a space and a place for other caregivers of pediatric patients who need to come together, share, learn from one another, as well as support each other. But asking the two of you, what additional resources and information would be helpful to you as a caregiver? And if, it's hard to think of that question maybe on the spot, but I would also present that to anyone who's watching. You can always reach out and let us know what are other resources that you need as a caregiver, as a parent for your patient that would make life easier for you. Like if you had a magic wand, what would be the one thing that you would wish for that you could have? I'll ask Kelly. I don't know if you can answer that right now, but what do you think?
Well, so when I think about when I'm sitting down and doing research and trying to be on top of anything that's going to be helpful and ease the burden of an adrenal insufficiency for her, I would love a go-to resource for the clinical trials that are underway. There seems to be a lot of variability overseas about the way that, the resources that they have, which, I think I would sell a kidney to make her life easier if there was something in Germany that I could, but it's very difficult here to try to find that information and kind of weed through the perhaps the garbage that might be out there. So I would love a resource where it was almost like tested information. For instance, there are adrenal pumps overseas. And, it took me calling 3 separate endocrinologists here to try to get a doctor that had heard of it and could at least talk to me about what it meant and actually kind of talk me down, because it sounded to me like an amazing solution. I was thinking it was more like an insulin pump that was a 2-way communication where the body told you how much you needed, and then the pump was able to administer that. But it took 3 conversations with 3 specialists for one of them to say, oh, no, it's not. It's one way. And, so anyway, so if that would have been an easier research path, that would have been nice. Another kind of tool that, so in part of our support group, we kind of always bring up, hey, what tools have you found? And there have been some amazing shares, resources that are out there, not like scientific resources, but simple, like ease of life things, like a pill box that separates 3 separate days. My daughter has a QR scan code. So God forbid something happened, the paramedics know to scan the code and find out all the medicines that she's on and that she's steroid dependent and that she's on blood thinners. So in our conversations in the caregiver support group, we've brought that up. So it would be great to have that kind of like growing, living, breathing list of resources. Perhaps that's something we could do with NADF.
I love that so much. And I think that's such a wonderful continued conversation. I know that's something that I always have with other patients, as well as the patient, advocate, as people are coming in. I always try to share all the things that I've found over the years since my diagnosis that help me make life easier one day at a time. So absolutely, that resource is great. And I did just want to pedal back a little bit and mention, NADF is a part of an international consortium with other adrenal organizations, and we have been meeting quarterly trying to come together. It is, there's so much information and there's so many people out there and so many organizations, and we are working on trying to unify and come together so that way there is some clarity for resources and for individuals. And that can be so valuable. So we're definitely working on that. And I love that you mentioned that because that's so important.
Yeah, that's exciting. Great to hear.
Okay, Marina, what other information or what other resources would be really helpful for your journey?
Yeah, Kelly hit that one with the information that I'm reading about, overseas and stuff, and I'm like, what about us? But that's awesome that NADF is kind of trying to get that together. You know, I find the best resources in connecting with other parents, like those are my resources. I do a lot of research, a lot of times, all the time. But I find that I learn best from other parents and other people that have Addison's. And, I always email my endocrinologist questions that I have, or, hey, have you heard about this? Or, hey, do you know this? Like, that's always a resource of mine. She's always, I've heard horror stories about, and some doctors not being very informative and not, doing their jobs correctly, for lack of a better word. But that's a great resource that I always use. So I think my advice to a lot of people that are having those kind of issues with doctors is, if one doesn't work for you, there's going to be another good one out there. So yeah. And everything else Kelly said.
I completely agree. And I think it's a valuable thing to reiterate how important it is to connect with other individuals who know what you're going through. And that's one of the reasons we host this webinar, even though, we're having 2 individuals here today, you're sharing your story with so many other caregivers out there who are going to learn, or things will resonate with them because they're also experiencing or going through something similar. And with that, I just want to reach out to anybody who's watching this. Whenever you do watch this, if you think you would benefit or would like to participate in our support groups, please reach out. You can reach me, Vanessa, at nadfsupport at nadf.us. Or wait, I can't think of what my email is right now. Brain fog is setting in. We'll put it in and attach with this video.
That was right, Vanessa.
Was that right?
That was
okay,
right.
Great. I did it. If I'm not reading it, sometimes this is why it was so important that I read the slides. But please reach out and I can connect you with Kelly, who is the caregiver support group. Or if you would prefer to, in addition, be a part of the caregiver group, you can always join your local support group. We have them all over the country. And please share anything else that you would like to see, any other information, because it is so important for us to figure out how we can better help and better support our community when you let us know. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much to Kelly and Marina for not only sharing your time and energy, but sharing your story, sharing the journey that you've been on. I know I have absolutely no idea what you're going through as a caregiver, as a parent, but as a patient with Addison's disease, I know the challenges that can come along with it. And I can't even imagine, it's so difficult to manage my own condition. I can't even imagine. And I'm just in awe of all of the caregivers out there who are taking such wonderful care of their patients, because what you do is really heroes work, because a lot of your patients who are pediatric cannot do it without you. So please reach out if there's anything we can do to support you. Know that you're not alone. And we just thank you so much for your time and energy. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Marina. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we end our roundtable tonight?
I'll definitely say, look for support. It has helped me, like Marina said, speaking to people that are going through something similar, just kind of, it just deeply. Thank you for sharing that, Marina.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely important to say, you're not alone and you don't have to go through it alone. So please reach out, lean on us, lean on your community, and know that together we can take care and make it better for patients in the future with adrenal insufficiency. So Thank you both so much. Thank you everyone who's watching in the future, and please reach out if there's anything we can do to help.